The case of the missing macaw. Chap.
As Jack stepped inside, the air was thick with smoke and the sound of clinking glasses. The room was filled with a motley crew of characters, from shady dealers to hardened criminals, all with one thing in common: a love of birds. Jack's eyes scanned the room, searching for any sign of Ruby or her captor. And then, in the far corner of the room, he saw her missus, Penelope Pembroke, her eyes wide with fear as she clutched a feathered boa to her chest. "Mrs. Pembroke," Jack bawled out, pushing his way through the crowd. "What are you doing here?" But before she could answer, a voice cut through the din, a voice Jack knew all too well. Well, if it isn't Detective Callahan," came the smooth, mocking tones of Slick the Parrot Smuggler. "What brings you to my humble establishment?" Jack's jaw clenched with anger as he faced off against his feathered foe. "I'm here for Ruby," he growled, his eyes narrowing, "and I won't rest until I find her." But Slick just laughed, a grating sound that sent shivers down Jack's spine. Ruby?" he cackled, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "She's safe and sound, Detective, for now." With a flick of his feathers, Slick disappeared into the crowd, leaving Jack alone with his thoughts. And as he watched the parrot smuggler slip away into the night, Jack knew one thing for certain: this was far from over. The feathered heist had only just begun. But just as Jack thought he had the upper hand, a cryptic message from an anonymous informant sent him spiraling down a rabbit hole of deception and danger. The note was written in elegant script, its words dancing across the page like a macabre waltz. "Meet me at midnight, Detective," it read. "I have information that will blow this case wide open." With a sense of trepidation, Jack pocketed the note and turned to Whiskers, who gazed up at him with wide, questioning eyes. "Looks like we've got a date with destiny, old friend," Jack said with a wry grin. "Let's see what trouble awaits us." As the clock struck midnight, Jack and Whiskers found themselves standing on a deserted street corner, the air heavy with anticipation. And then, like a ghost emerging from the shadows, the informant appeared, a figure cloaked in darkness. their features obscured by the brim of a hat. "You're late, detective," the informant said, their voice a low whisper. Jack bristled at the accusation, but before he could respond, the informant held out a trembling hand, a crumpled piece of paper clutched in their fingers. "This is everything you need to crack the case wide open," they said, their voice trembling with urgency. "But be warned, Detective Danger lurks around every corner." With a nod of thanks, Jack took the paper and unfolded it, his heart pounding with anticipation. And as he read the word scrawled across the page, a chill ran down his spine. For the answers he sought lay not in the shadows of the city, but in the depths of his own heart. And with Whiskers by his side, Detective Jack Callahan was ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. For Polly wants a clue, and he was determined to give it to her. Chapter 4. A Murder Most Foul. When Ruby's feathered corpse turns up floating in the Mississippi River, Detective Jack Callahan realizes he's not just dealing with a simple case of bird-nabbing. He's stumbled upon a murder most foul. With the clock ticking and the pressure mounting, Jack must race against time to unravel the tangled web of lies and the trail that surrounds Ruby's untimely demise. But as he inches closer to the truth, he discovers that some secrets are best left buried along with the bodies. The sun hung low in the sky as Detective Jack Callahan stood on the banks of the Mississippi River, the murky waters lapping at his feet. His trusty sidekick, Whiskers, sat at his side, his tail flicking back and forth in agitation. "Well, Whiskers," Jack said with a sigh, "looks like we've got ourselves a real whodunit on our hands." Whiskers meowed in agreement, his whiskers twitching with anticipation as they surveyed the scene before them. Ruby's feathered corpse bobbed gently in the current, her once vibrant plumage now matted and sodden. "It's a sad day when a beautiful bird like Ruby meets such an untimely end," Jack muttered, his brow furrowed with concern. But as he knelt down to examine the body, a glimmer of something caught his eye, a tiny scrap of fabric tangled in Ruby's feathers. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he reached out to retrieve it, his mind racing with possibilities. Could this be the clue he'd been searching for? Only time would tell. But one thing was for certain. Detective Jack Callahan was hot on the trail of a murder, and he wouldn't rest until justice was served. With a determined glint in his eye, Jack set to work, scouring the riverbank for any sign of foul play. But as the hours ticked by and the sun dipped below the horizon, his frustration grew. "It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack," Jack muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. But just when he was about to give up hope, a familiar voice called out from the shadows. Chapter the roar of frustration, Jack lunged forward, his fists flying as he unleashed a flurry of blows on his opponent. But the mastermind was no pushover, and they countered Jack's attacks with a ferocity that took him by surprise. As the battle raged on, Jack could feel the heat rising in the air, the tension building to a fever pitch as the two adversaries fought tooth and nail for supremacy. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Jack spotted an opening, a glimmer of weakness in his opponent's defenses. With a swift kick to the stomach, Jack sent the mastermind sprawling to the ground, their gun clattering to the pavement as they gasped for breath. And as Jack stood victorious over his fallen foe, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. But as the adrenaline began to wear off and the reality of what had just transpired sank in, Jack realized that the true meaning of justice may not be as black and white as he once thought. In a city as complex and colorful as New Orleans, there were no easy answers, only shades of gray. With a heavy heart, Jack holstered his weapon and turned to walk away, knowing that the battle was far from over. But as he disappeared into the night, a sense of hope lingered in the air, a hope that one day justice would prevail and peace would be restored to the streets of the Big Easy. After all, in a city as vibrant and resilient as New Orleans, anything was possible, even miracles. And as Detective Jack Callahan vanished into the shadows, he knew that he would continue to fight for truth, justice, and the American way, or, something like that. Epilogue: Free as a bird. With Ruby's killer behind bars and peace restored to the streets of New Orleans, Detective Jack Callahan finally had a chance to catch his breath and reflect on the wild ride that brought him to this moment. As he stood on the banks of the Mississippi River, watching the sunset in a blaze of orange and pink, Jack couldn't help but smile at the thought of the adventures that still lay ahead. It had been a roller coaster of a case full of twists, turns, and more than a few feathers ruffled along the way. But through it all, Jack had remained steadfast in his pursuit of justice, determined to see the truth prevail no matter the cost. As he gazed out at the river, Jack felt a sense of peace wash over him, a feeling of freedom that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in what felt like ages, he could breathe easy, knowing that the streets of New Orleans were safe once more. But as he thought back on everything that had transpired, Jack knew that the journey was far from over. In a city like New Orleans, you never knew what was waiting just around the corner, whether it was a feathered friend or a deadly foe. But one thing was for sure: as long as Jack Callahan was on the case, justice would always prevail, with a little humor and a whole lot of heart. With a contented sigh, Jack turned away from the river and headed back into the heart of the city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, in a place as vibrant and unpredictable as New Orleans, there was never a dull moment. And as he disappeared into the bustling streets, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement stirring within him, because in the end, the adventure was just beginning, and Detective Jack Callahan was ready to take on whatever came his way, one feather at a time.